Hello students, welcome back. Myself Pushpendra Singh and we are going to start with the history. So this would be your the NCERT based classes, okay? And today we are going to cover the history sections from the 6th standard history, that is our past part 1, okay? And this would be your 5th class. So I welcome you all. So let's begin with the history. Okay. So continuing to our last class, okay. So we were at we were discussing because we were discussing about the kingdoms of the coast along the coast, right? So you must understand the kingdoms which were lying along the coast. First of all, there is a coastline, right? So this coastline is lying all along the coastal areas. So if you have seen the map of India, if you have seen the map of India, so all along the map, so you see basically this is your peninsular part. So all along this coastline, right? So this is basically the Indian tip, and this is basically your the peninsular part, right? So it is marked along the coastline where you will have the hills. For example, in the western ghats you will have hills also. In the eastern ghats also you will have some sort of hills also, and also apart from that you have plateaus and river valleys also, right? And among those rivers, the Kaveri river, which flows towards your the eastern coastal plain, is the most fertile river valleys, right? That was there during that period of the time. Now the kings and the chiefs which were there and which used to control these river valleys which were fertile, right? The and all those coasts which were lying along those river valleys have become rich and powerful, because in the last time on the ancient period, whoever the king controls this, the choke points will be the most powerful, or will be considered the most powerful. Even the Sangam literature has mentioned the Cholas, Cheras, and the Pandyas, right, and their significant role, right, during the ancient past. Now, each of these three chiefs, that are the Cheras, Cholas, and the Pandyas, has two centers of the power, right? These two centers of the power, you can say, one on the inland and another on the coast, right? So the powers of the centers were lying on the coast as well as on the land. Now the six cities which were there, two of them were very powerful and very important also. The one is called Kaveri Pattanam. This is the today's we know about the cities Kaveri Pattanam. It was also known as Fuhar, okay, in the ancient period of the time, and the port of the Cholas, right, as well as the Madurai, which was the capital of Pandyas. These two cities were very famous, very important from the strategic point of view, right? The chiefs generally did not collect the regular taxes, right? But during that period of the time, they basically demand and receive the gift from the people, right? So they were the demand and the some gift, right, from the people, and people used to give them the gifts in favor of the chiefs. Now these chiefs will also send to the military expeditions and collected tributes from neighboring areas. For example, if they went and they conquered some place, right, there they will collect some tribute from the neighboring areas, right, because they have marched and they have led to the expedition and they won that expedition also. Now these chiefs were also kept some wealth and distributed the rest among their supporters, okay. So you must understand, the wealth distribution and the ownership was also distributed among their supporters, their members, their families, soldiers, and the poets, right? Many of the poets which were there, right, whose compositions are also found in the Sangam collection, right? These collections were basically made in the favor of or in the praise of the chiefs, right? So these collections or these Sangam collections which are made by these poets are in the praise of these chiefs, right, which often rewarded them with, some sort of a precious stones, gold, horses, elephant, chariots, and the fine. So you must understand, in return of such the poems which were written in the praise of such chiefs, the chiefs generally give them right give them a reward in the form of stone, gold, horses, elephants, etc., as well as the clothes. All right, let's understand Satavahanas. Who was Satavahanas? So you must understand, around 200 years later, right after the previous dynasties, a new dynasty came into the picture that was known as Satavahanas. These Satavahanas become very, very powerful in the Western India, right? So they were powerful in the Western India, and the most important ruler of the Satvana was Gautami Putra Sri Satkarni, which was the most powerful and more important ruler of the Satvanas. Now, uh, he, along with other Satvana rulers, also known as the lords of Dakshina Pada, right? Because literally the route which were leading to to the south, which was also named, which was also used as a name for the entire southern region, right? And that is the reason the Satvanas or Gautami Putra Sri Satkarni, as well as the other Satvana rulers, are also called as lords of the Dakshinapad, because that route leading to the south, and which was also controlled by these Satavahanas. And he sent his army to the eastern, western, and southern coast, just like a normal kings used to send, right? So that they can conquer the land which is nearby to their land, and which is far away also from their land, right? Let's understand about the Silk Route. So first of all, let's briefly understand about the silk. So technique of making silk. Okay, the silk, everybody about the silk. Okay, the technique of making that silk, or technique of inventing the silk, was basically happened in China in around 7,000 years ago. So it was first made in the China around 7,000 years ago. And China, who went to the distant land on the foots, you must understand, horseback on the camels, carried silk on with them. So you must understand, these peoples were traders basically. And these people used to used to put these silks right along with them when they ride on the foot or horseback on the camels. And generally those traders which followed the path is known as Silk Route. The path is known as Silk Route. Now, sometime apart from these traders, or the people who went from one place to another place carrying with the silk, apart from that, some of the Chinese rulers also sent gift to some of the foreign countries, like the rulers which were there in the Iran, Western Asia, right? In terms of the silk, in terms of the gift of the silk, right? So the other rulers also started acknowledging the silk spread, right, or the silk from the Chinese rulers. So this has led to the silk also spread to the Western countries, right? So silk started also spreading to the almost all of the world through that Silk Route, and this Silk Route become very, very famous through this interaction, or through this give and take. Around 2,000 years ago, the wearing silk became a fashion among the rulers and rich people in the Rome. So you must understand, the influence of the silk has increased, and this importance of the silk is also increased in terms of, say, the rulers started wearing these silk made clothes, and the rich people also started wearing the silk made clothes. And these silk made clothes are very, very expensive, right? Because it has to be brought from all the way from the China, and while importing, lot of money has to be spent. And you must understand, the roads which through which this silk used to come, they were very notorious, very dangerous, mountainous deserts, a lot of things were there. So they were very, very expensive to import the silk on that time. And people which were started living all along the route also demand the payments, right, for allowing the traders to pass through this Silk Route. So which has led to the further more complications of passing right through the Silk Route. So likewise, the importance of the Silk routes have increased tremendously, right, since the ancient period of the time. Now, some of the kings which were lying, they tried to control the large portions of this route, because they find that once we control this route, we will control some of the geostrategic points, and through that we can also control the trade, right? So that they can also benefit out of the tax, the tributes, and the gift that were brought by the traders traveling along the routes. So you must understand the kings which were there, the rulers which were there along the routes, they try to control it so that they can also benefit it out of it in terms of the taxes, tributes which were brought by the people along this route. And in return, what the kings used to offer, the king offered the traders some sort of a protection which passed through their kingdoms from the attacks from the robbers, right? Because a lot of other, theft, robbery will be there all along the route. So they provide them protection, but they in return, they basically demanded the tax, tributes, and the gift that were brought by the travelers all along the routes. All right. So it was basically related to the Silk Route. Now let's understand Kushanas. Who were Kushanas? So first of all, you must understand the rulers or West known rulers who controlled the Silk Route were basically Kushanas. All right. So the Kushanas were the rulers who are best known to control the Silk routes, right? And these Kushanas ruled almost northwestern India and almost Central Asia, right, around 2000 years ago. So you must understand these are the rulers who basically ruled the northwestern India as well as the Central Asia, and these rulers are known for controlling the Silk route, right? They are most prominent ruler. the the two major centers of the power were basically Peshawar and Mathura. The Mathura lies in the India and Peshawar lies in Afghanistan, right? So they were two major centers of the power on that time of the Kushanas, right? During their rule, a separate branch of Silk Route extended, right? Because these people started moving all along the routes. There were traders, right? There were, some sort of, some other people who used to move along the Silk Route. So they started moving all along, a separate branch of the Silk Route, which were extending, right, from Central Asia down to seaports to the mouth of River Indus, right, from where the silk was shipped westward to the Roman Empire. So you must understand a branch of Silk Route was also extended. Now this branch of the Silk Route started, connecting the Central Asia, right, to the mouth of River Indus. Now from the mouth to the River Indus, the silk was basically exported or shipped to the Roman Empire. So you can visualize that the demand for the silk during that period of the time was so intense, right, that the rich and the ruling class were basically started demanding the silk bearing clothes. Now the Kushanas were among the earliest rulers of the subcontinent to issue the gold coins, right? So during the earliest period of the time, they were basically the earliest rulers who basically issued these gold coins. Now these gold coins were used by the traders along the Silk Route, right? So when they move along the trade along the Silk Route, and this route was controlled by the Kushanas, so they used to have these gold coins, right, which were used by those traders when they move along this Silk routes. All right, let's understand the Buddhism. So most famous Kushana ruler, who were the Kushanas? The Kushanas were basically the first rulers who controlled the Silk Route, and they ruled almost all Central Asia and northwestern part of India around 2000 years ago, right? The most famous Kushana ruler over the Kanishka, who ruled around 1900 years ago, right, was basically Kanishka. So you can think of the ruler which was also known as a Kushana ruler, who was very very renowned and very very famous, who ruled around 1900 years ago. This ruler, who was known as Kushana, organized a Buddhist council. Okay, you must have heard about first Buddhist council, second Buddhist council, third Buddhist council, like that. So he organized a Buddhist council where in the council the scholars meet, and these scholars basically when they meet, they discuss important matters regarding the Buddhism subject, Buddhism teaching, regarding the subject matter. So these scholars basically used to have some sort of a brainstorming on the topic regarding the Buddhism, right? The Ashwaghosa, who was a poet, composed a biography of Buddha, right? That composition was known as Buddha Charita, right? This Ashwaghosa, the poet, lived in his court. Court means the court of the Kushana ruler. You are getting my point. The court means a Kushana ruler, and this Ashwagosha and the Buddhist scholars now begin writing in Sanskrit. All right. So these were basically some of the important, the achievements during that period of the time. And now during this period itself, a new form of Buddhism, which is also called as Mahayana Buddhism, was also developed. Right now, this Mahayana Buddhism has two different special features, right? The earlier the presence was shown in the sculpture by using certain signs. For example, his attainment of the enlightenment was shown by the sculpture of the people tree. All right. So now, which has changed to basically to some other features. Now, the second change was belief in the Bodhisattva. This was supposed to be a person, right, who had attained enlightenment. Once they attained the enlightenment, they could live in the complete isolation and mediate in the peace. So there were two changes in the Mahayana Buddhism. The first change is related to the Buddha's presence, which were basically in the form of sculpture, right, which is shown in the sculpture by using certain signs only, by certain sign only. But now they have been shown, shown with the help of some sort of a figure, right? And the second basically change is the belief in the Bodhisattva, right? They started believing that the person who has attained the enlightenment would have been attained the enlightenment, right? And they could live in the complete isolation and the mediate in the basically in the peace. Now you must understand, instead of doing that, they remained in the world to teach and help other people, right? So the worship of the Bodhisattva became very, very popular and spread throughout the Central Asia, China, and later to the Korea and the Japan. So you must understand the belief which was there regarding the Bodhisattva who have attained the enlightenment, and they lived complete isolation and the mediate, that was not true. And they did not believe in that also. Rather, they started, believing that the Bodhisattva who have attained the enlightenment, right, rather than living in isolation and complete, in the mediation process, right, they remained in the world, right? And instead of doing that, the mediation and isolation, they started teaching and helping others. These Bodhisattva, the worship of the Bodhisattva, become very, very, very popular, and which is spread to almost all countries, including the Central Asia, China, Korea, and the Japan. The Buddhism culture has spread to the western and southern India also, right, where the dozens of the caves were hollowed out of the hills for the monks to live in. So we have studied your viharas, right? So viharas are basically just the shelter place for the monks. So these viharas were basically carved out through the caves. Dozens of such caves have been found in the western India and southern India for the monks to live in. And you I have also given you that some of these caves, which were basically, have made on the endowment of some of the rich business persons or the traders. But few of those caves also made on the orders of king and queens, and others were made by on the general donations of the merchants, or on the orders of the merchants. So merchants, kings and queens basically helped in the construction of such caves. Now these caves were often located near the passes of the Western Ghats. All right. So the roads which were there, which connect these prosperous ports on the port with the cities on the Recon, which were basically run through these passes. So these passes are very, very important, and the connecting places were where the such type of caves have been made. And these traders used to stay in these caves during the travel, because trade on that time there was no such mechanism of the movement of the people. They used to move either on the foot or on the back of, say, horse or ponies or whatever maybe, but there was no mechanized means of the movement. So during that movement, the traders used to stay in the caves, and that is what the caves have essential significance in the term of uh, this context. Okay, let's understand the bhakti. So bhakti is generally understood a person's devotion. जैसे बोलते हैं ना भक्ति करना है. So bhakti means the person's inner belief, inner devotion to his chosen deity. जैसे मैं भगवान शिव की पूजा करता हूँ, that means I have my inner devotion towards a chosen deity. The deity is Lord Shiva. For me, the deity is Lord Shiva. I'm just giving an example, right? For you it may be Lord Krishna, for others it may be, say, Jesus Christ, for others it may be, say, some other god. So you must understand it is a person's devotion to her or his chosen god. Now anybody, whether the person is rich, poor, right, now, like whether it belongs to high or low caste woman or woman or man or anyone could be, right, could follow the path of bhakti. That means it is a universal, and any person, whether the person is rich, poor, or even, high status, low status, high caste, low caste, anyone can follow the path of the bhakti, right? The idea of the bhakti is present in the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita, which has which is basically, the Lord Krishna's, the speeches which are there in the Bhagavad Gita. So idea of Bhagavad Gita is have the very much, emphasis on the bhakti, which is a sacred book of Hindus, right, which was included during Mahabharata, right, which was fought between, Kauravas and Pandavas. Now you must understand, in this, the Krishna, who was the god, and Arjuna, who was his devotee, right, and a friend, to abandon all dharmas and take refuge on him, and only he can set the Arjuna free from every evil. So you must understand, there is a very beautiful conversation between the god Krishna and the Arjuna, right? The Arjuna was a devotee, and when he abandoned all the dharmas and he took the refugees, right, right, to the Krishna, the Krishna allows, or Krishna basically empowered the Arjuna so that it can free from every evil. It was well presented in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Now this form of worship which was there, right, which was spread from, right, from basically, from to the different parts of the country in this form. Now let's understand, when it spread to the different form of the country, though who followed this bhakti, right, the person who followed this bhakti, because bhakti is, you have some sort of a devotion to your deity. For example, if you are devoted to the Lord Krishna, if you are devoted to, say, Lord Shiva, right, so you would basically emphasize on devotion to particular deity, or individual worship of god, that I devote myself to this god or goddess, rather than performance of elaborate sacrifice, isn't it? So the people who believe in the bhakti, they started emphasizing on the devotion, they started emphasizing on the individual worship, rather than the emphasizing on the sacrifices, isn't it? Now according to this system of belief, that means bhakti system of the belief, that the devotee generally started worshipping the chosen deity. For example, if my deity is Lord Shiva, so I would worship, right, with my pure heart, because because I'm become a complete devotee of Lord Shiva. So I should be very pure in my heart. And the deity means Lord Shiva would appear in the form in which he or she may desire. You are getting my point? So that is how this bhakti system has to move, right? So the deity could be thought of as a human being, lion, tree, or any other form. So you can say that this deity can be of any form, could be of any form, right, with thought, could be thought of as a human being, as a lion, as a tree, or any other form, so that I could worship with my deity. All right. Once this idea, which was related to the deity and the devotee relationship, has gained acceptance, the artist started making the beautiful images of these deities. So the beautiful images of the deities started making, and you must understand, the bhakti which was there, once it spread to the different regions, it started inspiring some of the best expressions, right? Because you must understand, these best expressions are found in the art. So people, or the art makers started making the best sculpture which shows say Lord Krishna and Arjuna. And also the poets started making poetry which started making the beautiful composition of the bhakti traditions, architectural drawings, architectural, the important buildings, which has also given a lot of emphasis on the bhakti system. Right now, let's understand the new empire and the kingdom. So what is that in the new empire and the kingdom? First of all, you must understand the inscriptions. The inscriptions, right? Inscriptions means the important instructions which were carved out on the solid surface, right? The solid surface may be the stone, or solid surface may be some of the metal. Now this inscription is of special kind, which is known as prashasti, right? So the inscription which is of special kind is known as prashasti, which is a Sanskrit word meaning in praise of, in praise of, right? So you must understand a prashasti started making in favor of a king, in favor of a kingdom. So the prashastis were composed for some of the rulers. So understand, prashasti means prashasti means in praise of. For example, if the prashasti for say Lord Ashoka was made, that means you have made some statement in praising of Ashoka. So that means some statement which are in the praise of Ashoka has made, which is known as prashasti, prashasti patra. That means आपकी praise की गई है, आपकी मतलब आपकी qualities को बताया गया है उसके अंदर. All right, so they are all prashastis. So let's understand Samudragupta's prashasti. Okay, so the poet which raised the king in the glowing term as a warrior, right? As a king who won the victories in the battle. So you must understand what is there in the prashastis during that period of the time. So for example, if I am the poet, right? If I'm the poet and I have to make some prashasti, say in favor of Samudragupta, how would I make? How would I make? I would glorify, the Samudraguptas as a warrior. I would say that he was so brilliant warrior that under his sword, almost all the opponents have gone. He has made a tremendous defeat on those on his opponent, and he has made a marvelous success in the basically in the battle, right? And I would further explain the king who won the victories, isn't it? So I will further explain now. The person who would be making all such the praising would be a poet. So he would describe them, I mean describe those rulers almost equal to the gods, right? So you must understand such prashastis which were made in the praise of a particular rulers are in the generally in the very very long sentences, isn't it? So now I hope you are clear with the prashastis. Harisena described four different kinds of rulers. Okay, the Harisena, who was basically a poet, right? Four different kind of ruler, and tell us about the Samudragupta's policy towards them. Okay, so you must understand now these four different kinds of the rulers which were there. So first type of ruler which were described by the Harisena, who was a poet. So the first type of ruler was Aryavarta. Aryavarta, the area which was shaded in the green on the map. So you can say that you can read the map which is there in our NCERT, right? So I will show you the map a bit later. So you must understand the Aryavarta, there were 9 rulers on that time during Aryavarta, right? Who were basically uprooted, right? And their kingdoms were made part of Samudragupta's empire. So you must understand the Harisena who had made, you know, the prashastis in favor of, or in the favor of Samudragupta's, has made a prashasti or in praise of in such a manner that the Samudragupta's empire was expanded, and Samudragupta had uprooted the 9 rulers who were part of Aryavartas. So it is in the praise of Samudragupta. I hope it is clear. The second is the rulers of Dakshinapada. I hope you remember, that was Kushanas, right? That was Kushanas. So that was he made that there were 12 such rulers during Dakshinapada, and some of whose capitals were marked with red dots on the map. You can see on the NCERT, they were surrounded to the Samudragupta. All surrendered to the Samudragupta after being defeated, and they didn't allow them to rule again. So that is how the glorifying of the Samudragupta was done. So all such 12 rulers was defeated. They surrendered before the Samudragupta, and Samudragupta was very generous and allowed all the 12 rulers to rule again in their respective kingdom, right? Isn't it? Then the inner circle of neighboring state, for example, you have the neighboring state, for example, in the some coastal Bengal, Nepal, and number of Gana Sanghas in the northwest, right? They brought tribute, followed his orders, and attended the courts. So the Harisena said that all of the neighboring states which were there, right? These inner circle of the neighboring states, now these used to bring the tribute to the king. They used to follow the orders given by the king. They used to attend the court of the king. The court of the king means the Samudragupta, isn't it? The rulers of the outlying area, right? So the rulers of the outlying area, that means the inner circle and the outlying area, right? These are perhaps the descendant of the Kushanas and the Shakas, and the rulers of Sri Lanka who submitted to him on offered daughter in the marriage, right? So that is how the glorification was done in the prasasti. So I hope it is clear. The prasasti is basically a made, or it's a composition which was made by a poet in the praise of a particular ruler. So this I have illustrating about the Harisena's composition of the Samudragupta in terms of the prasasti. So the prasastis of Samudraguptas was made by the Harisena, and it is clearly describing that that the Samudragupta was so powerful that the 9 rulers of the Aryavarta has surrendered before him, right? He uprooted the 9 rulers. All the 12 rulers along the Dakshinapada also surrendered him, right? Inner circle of the neighboring states also give the tribute, followed his orders, attended his courts, isn't it? And all such things basically has led to the glorifying of the king, which was Samudragupta, right? Then the second is genealogies, right? So what is the genealogies? Most of the prasasti means some of the praising letters in favor of a particular king or particular ruler. Now they also mentioned the ancestors of the ruler. So now most of the prasastis which were made, they also mentioned the ancestors. Okay. Now this one mentions Samudragupta's great grandfather, the grandfather, father, and mother. So genealogies ka matlab very simple is that the prasastis which were composed in favor of particular king, they also used to make the descriptions about the family, the close family, the lineage, about 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 the king. For example, the Samudragupta's grandfather, grandmother, mother, father, if they used to describe them through this prasastis, that shows that genealogies have been described in the prasasti. Now let's understand Harshvardhan and Harshcharita. Okay, so first of all, the knowledge about the Gupta king, many other got it from the inscriptions and the coins. So you must understand, the Gupta was very powerful empire, right? So we came to know, or we came to have the knowledge about the Gupta kings, right, from basically the inscriptions and the coins, right? So from the inscriptions and the coins, we came to know about the Gupta kings. The most important ruler was Harshvardhana. The Harshvardhana, who ruled around 1400 years ago, was one such rulers, right? He has the poet, which was a court poet, which was also known as Banabhatta. Banabhatta, this Banabhatta wrote his biography, right, which was known as Harshcharita, the Buddha Charita, just like Buddha Charita was written by a poet, right, in the praise of the Buddha. Just like that, the the Harsh Charita was composed in Sanskrit by Bhanabhatta, and this Bhanabhatta was a court poet in the court of Harshvardhana. Now, he gave us the genealogy of Harsha. Genealogy of Harsha means regarding his the familial, the terms, his father, mother, and etc. and so forth, and how he become the king. One such the detailed account was given by Zhong Zhuang, who was basically who gave the detailed account of the Harshvardhana's court. So he was basically a person who came from China. So he was a traveler, and he spent a lot of time in the Harshvardhana's court. So he gave a detailed account of the administration of the Harshvardhana, right? And moreover, his brother-in-law was the ruler of Kannauj. Whose brother-in-law means the Harshvardhana's brother-in-law was the ruler of Kannauj, and he was killed by the ruler of Bengal. Right now, the Harsha took over the kingdom of Kannauj and then led an army against the ruler of Bengal in order to take the revenge of of his brother-in-law, who was ultimately killed by the ruler of Bengal. So you can think of, he was much powerful. His biography was written by the Banabhatta, who was basically a court poet. And regarding the administration, the Zhang Zhuang also gave lot of detailed account about the court of Harshvardhana in this regard, right? Now, next is, he was successful in the east. So Harshvardhana was successful in the east, and Harshvardhana conquered the Magadha and the Bengal, because the Bengal, he took the revenge, right, in favor of his brother-in-law, who was defeated, and he was killed by the ruler of Bengal. So ultimately he conquered both Magadha and the Bengal, but he was not very successful elsewhere, right? So he was successful in the east but not in the elsewhere, right? For example, he tried to cross the Narmada to march into the Deccan, but ultimately he was stopped by the ruler belonging to the Chalukya dynasty, who was the Pulakeshin II. Okay, all right. So he was not so powerful and was stopped by the Pulakeshin, who was the Chalukya dynasty, important ruler. So like that, he was only partially successful in the east. Okay, let's understand the Pallava, Chalukya, and Pulakeshin's Prasasti. Okay, all right. So let's understand this one. So there were two more important ruling dynasties in the south during this period. Okay, the most important two ruling dynasties were Pallavas and Chalukyas. These were two important ruling dynasty in the southern India. In the southern India, the kingdom of Pallava spread from the region around its capital. Okay, so the kingdom of Pallava basically spread, right, from the region around its capital. Now, this was spreading from a Kanchipuram to the Kaveri Delta, right? So you can say that the Pallavas was spreading from the capital, which was at Kanchipuram, to the Kaveri Delta on the eastern coast, while the Chalukyas was centered around the Raichur Dove, which was there between Krishna and the Tungabhadra. So you can look into the map, you can visualize that between these two doves, dove means dove ka matlab hota hai the area which was basically which was basically irrigated, or which were basically covered by the two rivers, right? So these were Krishna and the Tungabhadra. So in between these two regions, the Chalukyas, the kingdom or the dynasties were ruling, and the Pallavas dynasty was ruling basically from Kanchipuram to the Kaveri Delta, right? So these were their spread, geographical spread, if you look into the map, right? Now, regarding the capital, the Ahole was the capital of Chalukya. You might have heard about the Ahole, but the capital of the Pallavas were basically Kanchipuram, right? Uh, Now, this Ahole was also an important trading center, and it's also developed an important religious center also, and there is lot of number of temples is also located, right? So apart from the Kanchipuram, which is also known for the silk, The Ahole, which is the capital of Chalukya, is also important trading center, and which is also developed, right, as an important religious center also. The Pallavas, which ruled from its capital to to the Kaveri Delta, say from Kanchipuram to the Kaveri Delta, and the Chalukyas, which were ruling from the Narmada and the Tugubhadra, Krishna and the Tugubhadra river. So that is called Raichur Dov, right? Raichur Dov. So these both Pallava and the Chalukya frequently raided to one another land, right? Sometimes Pallavas raided on the Chalukya land, Chalukya raided on the Pallavas land, right? Especially both were started attacking on the capital cities, right, which were prosperous towns. For example, whenever the Chalukya has to raid, the Chalukya raided on, say, on basically on the Kanchipuram. When the Pallavas has to raid, the Pallava basically raided, basically Ahole, which was the capital of Chalukya, right? The best known Chalukya ruler was Pulakesin II. He was the same ruler who basically stopped the movement of Harshvardhana to crossing the Narmada, right, and to moving to the Deccan. So this same Pulakesin, who was basically the ruler of the Chalukya dynasty, right, or the true ruler of Chalukya dynasty, was most powerful and most important, the best known ruler. He was Pulakesin, and we know about him from the Prasasti, right? The Prasasti means in praise of, which was composed by a poet which is known as Ravi Kirti, right? Right. So just like Bhana Bhatta, who was the court poet in the court of Harshvardhana, right? It was Ravi Kirti who was a court poet in the court of Pulakeshin, who made the Prasasti. And this Prasasti, which was made in favor of Pulakesin, who tell us about his ancestors, that means about the genealogy, who track through the four generations, like another, just like a father to the son. And Pulakesin evidently got the kingdom from his uncle. So you can say that all such things are very well described, right, in the Prasasti of Pulakesin II by a court poet which is known as Ravi Kirti, right? And afterwards, both the Pallavas and the Chalukyas gave way to the new rulers belonging to the Rashtrakuta and the Chola dynasties. All right. So when they were both, defeated, right, they gave way to the new rulers, which was known as Rashtrakutas and Chola. So these were two rulers. I will repeat it again for you, that the Pallavas area basically stretched from its capital, which was Kanchipuram, to the Kaveri Delta, and the Chalukyas basically is centered around the Raichur Dov, which was basically between the river Krishna and the Tungabhadra, right? These were basically started frequently attacking on each other's capital. And moreover, the most important Prasasti was also made in favor of Pulakesin II, who was the most important ruler of the Chalukya dynasty. The Prasasti was made by the Ravi Kirti, and this has also had the genealogy. And both the Chalukya and Pallavas gave way to the new rulers, which were belonged to Rashtrakuta and the Chola dynasty. All right, let's understand the administration of the kingdom. So first of all, there were some new developments as well. Right? The king adopted a number of steps to win the support of men who were powerful, either economically, socially, or because of their political and military strength. So you must understand that there was some new development which were happened, right? So the king which was there have to take some of the steps to to win the support of the men who were very powerful on that time, and moreover you can think of that that economically, socially, because of their political and the military strength. Now let's look at into the administrative angle of such things. So some important administrative posts were now only hereditary. All right, because as I told you that the king have to adopted the number of steps because he has to stabilize his kingdom, and its only way to stabilize the kingdom is to win the support of the men who were very powerful either economically, socially, politically, or militarily, isn't it? So he has to take the support of these men's, right? So to basically take the help of these persons. So let's understand about the administration. So most important administrative post which was there, right, they were now become hereditary. That means the son will only succeed the father, isn't it? So some of the administrative posts are become now hereditary. The son will succeed or to the fathers, right? And the poet Harisena was the Mahananda Nayaka or the chief judicial officer like his father, isn't it? So it was just as made. And sometimes one person held many offices, right? For example, for instance, you can say that being a Mahananda Nayaka, the Harisena was a Kumar Matya. Kumar Matya means it was an important minister, and Sandhi Vigrahika, which means a minister of war and the peace. So the same person who is who is who is holding many offices, right? For example, Harishena, who was a Kumaramatya, meaning a very, very important minister, and who was also Sandhi Vigrahika, right? That means a minister of war and the peace. So it's holding the multiple posts, right? And the important men probably had to stay in the local administration because they have to support the administration from inside and the outside also, right? So these included some of the, for example, Nagara Sreshti, or the chief banker or the merchant of the city, right? And Sarthavaha, or the leader of the merchant caravans, right? Or Prathama Kuliki, or the chief craftsman and head of the Kaista or the scribes, right? So these were important, some of the men who were probably had to stay in the local administration to support the administration, right? From within. All right, so these were some of the important aspect which were related to the administration. Now these policies were reasonably effective, right? But sooner or later some of these powerful men grow strong enough to set up an independent kingdom, because you must understand the king which was later changed to his way of the life. Now this king has made the policies which were very effective, but the chosen person who was also equally important, they become very strong over the period of the time. Their strength grows, right? And over the period of the time they basically set up an independent kingdom also, so which has led to the setting up of the independent kingdom in their own respective state, right? Isn't it? So these are all some of the important is basically the important aspect. All right, so we shall continue from these slides tomorrow in our class. All right, so we shall bind up today's session and we'll meet again tomorrow at the right time. So thank you very much. Thank you.